All right, welcome to another episode of the Myokinetix Podcast. Today we have a good friend of mine and a tribe member of the Myokinetix tribe, Nick Zerby, who is also a host of his own podcast, the Fat Kids Podcast, which dive into various topics regarding parenting all the way from health and well-being. I think you guys should check that out. But I knew Nick since I first started my practice, and Nick was probably one of the first patients that I had. Funny story, the closet that I started with in a CrossFit gym, Nick used that as his storage closet. So I met him by saying, like, dude, I need your stuff out so I can start my business inside the closet that you're using your store. You were storing like tons of like random stuff, right?
Yeah, so all the AV equipment and stuff. But actually even before that, you were the personal PT for us when we went to Miami that one time.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes. No, but that was before. So,
was it before that?
So I met you before, and then we went to Wadapalooza.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
But
then I had that messed up.
But we'll talk more. But hey, man, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me. It's been a long time coming. I'm glad to see that your business is rocking and rolling. I love coming to be an actual true patient, not just like, hey, Natty, I've got something going on with me. I need a reference. And that's kind of how this, all started. But I'm glad to be on here.
But honestly, any capacity that I can help people, I always try to as best as I can.
For sure.
But before we get into that, dude, let's just tell the audience, the listener, a little bit about you because you have an awesome background.
Yeah. I was a former college athlete, former 320-pound offensive lineman for the great James Madison University. Shout out to JMU. They are the program there now is unbelievable versus when I was there. But I've got a lot of really good friends and contacts from there. Let's see. I am a father of 2 kids. My daughter's actually her 9th birthday is today, so happy birthday, Charlotte. I got her a bow.
I saw on Instagram.
Yeah.
Badass.
Yeah. So we're gonna teach her how to shoot, build some confidence in her, in her ability to be able to do that. I told her this morning, no, you don't. I promise you never have to hunt. We can just kill targets, right? Yeah. So she was pretty excited about that. My son is soon to be 12. I coach lacrosse. I coach youth lacrosse, youth football. I coach high school football, offensive and defensive line. I was part owner of a production company prior to about a year ago. And since making that change, I've actually started writing a book, started the podcast, and I'm actually working on building out a pretty unique healthcare company. So I'm in kind of the last stages of preparation for that, and should be hopefully getting that like into motion very, very soon.
Yeah. So let's take it way back. Obviously, playing high level college sport, like you're a competitor to begin with.
Sure.
And when we first met, you were doing a lot of CrossFit.
Yeah.
And I think most people who were competitive in their early careers, athletically, they transition to CrossFit. And now you're kind of just, working out to stay healthy. So can we talk about that shift? Because I think that's the shift that I had to make personally from like training to working out, and working out in a sense of like just, hey, feeling good while you're working out and afterwards. So how hard was that for you to make that transition?
Yeah, so if I take it just one step before that, finding CrossFit was kind of what, and I was just talking and thinking about this, but finding CrossFit was what basically kind of saved my life. And not, because I was depressed or anything along that. Maybe I was, but I was facing a multi-level spinal fusion. I had gone from big offensive lineman to I want to lose some weight, but then I was sick and tired of training and sick and tired of lifting weights. So I kind of turned into dad bod for a while, even though I wasn't a dad yet. And then, I'm staring down the barrel of a multi-level spinal fusion, and at like 27-ish years old, and decided that's not a route that I want to travel. So started lifting heavy again, took off a bunch of weight, found CrossFit, absolutely love it. Love the idea of the competitive nature and everything that you just mentioned. Really found a great home in that as an exercise regimen. But not because of CrossFit did I get hurt. it's because I wasn't using proper mechanics in certain areas, which, we can question around that and dive into that as you see fit. But I learned from you guys that even though I was mechanically doing things even though I was doing things right as far as form wise within my ability and mobility, that doesn't mean necessarily that I'm firing the right muscles at the right time to get the right job done. So reel that back, fast forward to now, after coming to see you for a really pretty bad stretch of injuries. Now I'm learning that I got to exercise for longevity, like you said. So from a mentality perspective, I'm still mourning that a little bit. I do love to be competitive, and I think at some point I will maybe not get back into competitive CrossFit per se. And don't get me wrong, I was never an elite level athlete or anything along those lines, but had a lot of fun going to competitions and things like that. So it's tough, and I do miss it. Going to a gym and competing with other folks, but I found out that I'm good with competing with myself, and I'm good with the longevity aspects of exercise. So still getting over it a little bit, but I think I'm going to find other ways to kind of compete. Maybe I was talking to a guy about mountain bike, like mountain bike racing, and maybe even like now they have these things where you can do like trail running, mountain biking, and swimming, or you can just do like a biathlon, which is swimming and biking. So I'm looking into those kind of things as well.
Yeah, I think what CrossFit did really well, and again, I came from a CrossFit background,
right?
And I was coaching CrossFit. I got my L1, L2.
Right.
I was doing that during PT school, so I was really, really into it. And what I noticed in CrossFit is that you can coach an athlete who has a superb form, looks great from all technical aspect, and then as soon as they finish the lift, it's like, oh, my back hurt. I was like, how? Everything looks great, but it's all the internal feedback that they didn't have, right? So it's you can have the technical aspect, but if you don't have the internal feedback of your mind-muscle connection of like what's firing, what are you using, where are you generating force from,
right? That's
where things kind of break down internally. And I use that word breakdown loosely, and I'm not saying like things are exploding in there. I'm just saying like that's when you're not performing on an optimal level.
Right.
And I picked that up early because when I was in PT school, I was still coaching. I was like, wait, why is that happening? So I started diving down deeper and deeper. And then as I transitioned from CrossFit to coaching weightlifting, which is a super technical sport to begin with, I got to get extremely good at spotting things that I can change very quickly because it's so dynamic. So that gave me a really good context of like, okay, if I'm seeing this and I can make this kind of change, what message do I need to impress upon my clients to make sure that they can make that change internally?
Yeah.
So that way they don't need me, right? So my whole concept was if I'm coaching a group of people and we're all doing snatch today and there's 14 of them,
right,
I got to make sure they are able to move well and safe and efficient. And I apply that whole concept into PT, right? Because the whole point, most of the problem with the medical model and especially in PT is that there's really no real end date. Everything has to do with prior level of function. What were you able to do before? Going up and down the stairs, walking, like daily of activity living. That's what everybody ADLs, always talk about.
Right.
But with working with someone like you, you're more than just a normal human being. You're doing more stuff.
Right.
And you want to do more things. So I had to get creative beyond the medical model.
Right.
So I had to take what I use as a coach, apply to the medical model, and then say, okay, how do I get this person who likes to do this thing to do it as long as possible in the right way without needing my help long term?
Right. How, it begs the question to like, how well do you think, because I have an impression of it, how well do you think even, let's just say really good CrossFit gyms, CrossFit coaches, how well do you think that they understand, I'm not talking about the mechanic of a lift, but I'm talking about, and this is what I've learned here, is the utilization of the recruitment of the proper muscle and the proper sequence to get the job done. I mean, that's what I found out here, that's why I ended up injured, not because I was doing something wrong with a press overhead necessarily form-wise, but Danny and you are like, do you know that you can't even activate your serratus anterior muscle, and you can't connect these two muscles down here, which should be doing 90% of the work. Like, I couldn't even activate those. And and at first I was like, come on, man. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I can put whatever weight, over my head this many times and I feel good doing it. And you're like, no, you can't. And that's why you're injured, because you're allowing small muscles to do the big muscles job. Like, how many do you think that really even good coaches know that? Can they spot that or not?
I think it depends on the intention behind the coaching. Right. So for me, is if I were to coach something, what is my purpose behind that cue, and what outcome do I want?
Right.
And once you put, again, it's not coach's fault, just like it's not PT fault most of the time when people are not getting the outcome they want, because is the constraint that you have placed upon you. So if you're coaching a group of 14 people,
it's time,
and you have 15 minutes to warm up, that's a tough. For me, that's still really challenging.
Right.
I got better at it when I started doing one-on-ones.
Gotcha.
Right. That's why the one-on-one model is so huge for us here.
Right.
Just because it gave us that time to build up that narrative to show you. Because most of the time, we talked about this, is that there's a couple things that need to happen before we can create some real change. First, I need to show you that there's a gap between what you're doing and how well you could be doing it. Right. And the analogy I like to use is that people only call it exterminator when they see a rat. I got to show you there's a rat. So once I show you there's a rat,
got it,
and then you're like, oh yeah, okay, I get it now.
Yep.
Now I can say, okay, now you're more receptive to change.
Yeah.
Then I can say, all right, Nick, why don't we do these two things, and you let me know how you feel.
Right.
How's your body? What's your body telling you?
Right.
And do you feel X, Y, and Z? So we always like to give verbal cue or like a little breadcrumb.
Yeah.
Once you start ingrain that, then we reinforce it. Hey, you see how we do this, and you fail your serratus firing.
Right. Now
can we apply that when you do an overhead lift?
Right.
Now we're start building. We're stacking wins.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to movement pattern.
Yeah.
Right. So for most coaches, I think it's really challenging for them, especially in a CrossFit group class setting, because they don't have time. If you give people enough time and you have a coach who's truly care about his career and the well-being of his clients, you will 100% get that. And I think it's all about the integrity of that person as well as a coach, right?
Right.
So for me, I put my name behind everything, so I take ownership of it.
Right.
And I'm proud with what I do. And when I don't get the result I want, I go back and I say, what am I not seeing?
Yeah.
And there are more of that now than before. And you can see like the transition from CrossFit went from a super intense kind of bro-ish environment to now more of like, okay, hey, and again, because of the competitive nature, you have to do a better job in the field. Otherwise, people will leave.
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely agree, and I can feel that shift. I just find it crazy that, I've had some great coaches, right? That coach on form, they pay attention to a lot of things, not just in CrossFit, but strength coaches through college. I mean, and I just would have never, I almost feel like to take your coaching to the next level, or to take that, they need to understand and meet with someone like you, right? Or Danny, or somebody who's like a complete movement specialist, to be able to help them identify like these little tiny tweaks. It may mean a big muscle that you're not moving, but it could be just a tweak of like, figuring out how to turn that thing on or off.
Yeah. So just going back to what you were saying, I think that's why the idea of workshops came about, right? Yeah. Different camps. So that way you can get really good at a certain movement.
Right.
And what I love about CrossFit is that it's really introduced the concept of movement variability.
Right.
Before that, people were just doing bro lifts or powerlifting.
Right.
Right. Really no weightlifting. It kind of reignite the birth of USA weightlifting all over again.
For sure.
And it's the only competitive fitness sport that allowed the spectators to do exact same thing that the elite level were doing. Right. So it's almost like what the NFL is doing with flag football. Yeah. Right? So So that's why people love it, right? They watch the games and they're like, oh, I can do that workout that Frazier just did, that Froning just did.
Right.
So it gave people an opportunity to participate.
For sure.
Otherwise, because you and I, we watched Mahomes play. Yeah. We're not gonna be like, oh yeah, let's go outside and run. Right. Like that's not how it works now. Right. But with CrossFit, it really bring the high level sport and bring it to the people, and then that's why people really bought into it.
Yeah.
And I think, again, I would never bash CrossFit just because I think it's depend on where you go and all of that stuff. Just like I can't bash PT because there's good and bad PT in every profession.
Sure.
Right. And I think having the concept of workshop, small group, one-on-one personal training, and like all one-on-one PTs, that's when you really niche down and figure out like, okay, hey, here's what I need to work on.
Yeah.
But I think it has to do with the individual, like someone like you who value, like, hey, I want to get better, I want to get stronger, I want to improve my technique. Right. You are willing to invest the time and the money to get better, right? And I think us as society, from what I witnessed, we are more, we're ready for that a little bit more.
I could not agree more. I think, from a societal perspective, we're at a neat age. I mean, how old are you?
I'm 34.
All right, so you're 34. I'm 43, so just flip that number on its head. My generation in particular is at a neat age because we still understand enough of the old school, right? Like you would, and we could center it around anything, but you still understand enough of the old school where you had to pick up a magazine or, you had to know somebody in the sport, right? Or cars, whatever you want to talk about. But then, so we know that, but then we saw this transition to, the internet and all of the information that it's available today. And I had a discussion with a guy the other day who, shout out to Garage Strength. He's out in Pennsylvania.
He's great.
Dane Miller.
Yeah,
Dane,
he's great.
Dane is a loose friend of mine. I actually used to compete against him in high school, but great guy. Anyway, we had this conversation about how much is available, online, and how much more young people, old people, anybody can find out about whatever it is, right? If it's meditation or if it's therapy or if it's PT or if it's, weightlifting, whatever, there's still unvetted resources out there, right? There's still junk information out there, but yet the fact that you can go on and attend a seminar or, a movement clinic or things, that's definitely driving to it. And I think people are ready for it, for sure.
But there's also, it's the information age that we're in. Like the transition I saw when I first started my practice, which is now 5 years ago.
It's crazy.
And now, like, our job now is to more kind of like filter out information because there's so much information
Filter out
there.
bad info.
Yeah.
Oh.
But in, like, not necessarily bad. Sometimes the information, they might not be ready for it.
Right.
Right.
Like they're taking 2 steps ahead.
Exactly.
Right.
And
that makes sense.
We're at a phase now where people want to leapfrog their progress without going through the abyss in some way.
Gotcha.
Right. So, for example, like your case, you needed to have some sort of setback, pain, for you to like, hey man, I really got to get this addressed. If you didn't have that, there's no way.
No.
We wouldn't have this kind of conversation, or you'd have this kind of awakening in your health a little bit, right? And because of that, the filter information, what we like to do is we obviously meet people where they are. I always tell my team, our job is meet them where they are, just like how we talk to any small children to earn trust. Like there's one book that was recommended to me. It's like I think the title is like, you're not as smart as you think you are. It's all just go based on how we are as human being. Right. Like just because we have an iPhone and we have all this information, that doesn't steer us away from like our like innate response. We're still mammal in some way. Nothing really changed. Our motivator, our like behavior, the way we think, still the same, right? So most of the time is that for me to earn your trust is I have to meet you where you are. Right. If you come into me and all I do is like, Nick, this terrible, you're not doing this, you're not like, there's no way, because there's a huge gap. So like after I show you that there's a rat, I have to then say, hey, here's where it's coming from, here's where it could be, and then just kind of walk you through the step. And then from there, as we walk together, we then start building trust. And then as we build trust, then I can then say, hey, based on our experience, I believe this is the best first step for you. Right. And then the best second step. Right. It's my job now is to give you the information that is necessary for you to make the decision that you're comfortable with, so that way you can impose change upon yourself. Right. I can't bring change for you. I mean, you're a father of 2 and your kids are growing. Like, I'm sure there's things that they're doing. You're like, I wouldn't have done that. Right. But then there's a part of you where you have like, but they do have to learn.
Yes. Yeah. You know what? That's a good analogy because parents with kids, I think, do, or at least they're trying to understand that, right? But they should understand that about themselves, right? Mm-hmm. You know, that's a big thing and a big part of it. Like what I like to talk about with people is you're the only one that can ultimately make the change in you, mm-hmm. right? Like, so your approach of helping people find the trust and the confidence around walking next to them in their pattern, but you got it. They're the only ones that can take charge of actually making it better. Mm-hmm. I mean, otherwise, unless they can come to you 7 days a week, which for most people just isn't possible, mm-hmm. they're not going to be able to do it. They've got, they've got to ingrain it into their own head, take the stuff that you all are showing them or showing me how to do and do it at home. Mm-hmm. Figure it out, do it at home, use the techniques. And that's a great approach. And I don't think you get that with really good PTs at other areas. But I was saying earlier, I was kind of PT adverse because I'd sit there and I'd say like, oh man, like what are they going to do? They're going to put an ice pack on me. Okay, I know that. They're going to heat, okay, I know that. They're going to tell me to move this. They're going to stretch. I stretch all the time. Like, mm-hmm. So it's what's the next level? What's the beyond? And I've seen lots of PTs. I've had lots of, I've recovered from a shoulder surgery. I've recovered from a lot of different injuries over the years. I never really felt that connected to it until I came to see you guys. And I think it's because of your approach, not necessarily because of that you have such a wide difference in skill set. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I honestly, I appreciate that feedback so much. And what I always tell my team is it's not what we are able to do for people, is how we can empower them right. to make better decisions and how we can communicate with them. I think that's probably where that's really the secret sauce. Yeah. And and as far as like the norm of, again, the reason why I'm here right now and Myokinetix exists is because of the norm, right? The norm was not good enough for me. Agree. And for me, it was like, how do I break the norm and how do I do it in a way where I can get people to see and educate them that, hey, there's something like this that exists and you deserve something like this. For sure. And kind of going back to just basic human being, right? Is we have a certain narrative that we tell ourselves, and then that become our identity in some way, where we have people who identify with being hurt and being injured, right? And for some people, and I picked this up when I was reading this book on like learn helplessness, is that is their cycle. Yeah, as part of who they are. That's their narrative. Sometimes they don't want to change that narrative. Right. So as a PT, like we put our best foot forward. If someone come in with a glimpse of hope of wanting to change that narrative, we can absolutely help them. Yeah. With someone that come in like, no, this is who I am, this is the narrative that I have, and they don't want to change it, there's no way I can help. Because the idea of change and hope, like you need a glimpse of hope in order to promote change. If you can't see yourself being a better version of yourself, I can't help you get there.
I imagine that's so much easier with athletes and the type, at least, from my experience being here, you mostly everybody I see in here is an athlete. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely an easier path to travel with them, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. What do you do with a patient who doesn't have that? They want to feel hopeless and you treat them for a while and they're not making the progress. Like, what do you do with them?
Well, I think it's coming to having an honest conversation. Right. Of like, hey, we've been added for this amount. Like where do you think you are? Where do you think you could be? Yeah. I think that's a question, right? If they say there's no way I can get better, then that's a hard narrative to change. Right. But what we're trying to do to pre-frame everything from day one, since we if someone come in, they contact us, we try to provide as much information as possible of who we are, how we can help. And, anyone who come in here, that like first day you come in for your eval, you get a little box from us. Inside the box, there's a shirt that say athletes on it. Right, yeah. So that's absolutely intentional because my idea of an athlete is someone who is ready and prepared to take on whatever life is bringing, in front of them. Right. So again, for someone like you, back in your college day, right? You're an O lineman. You know, like it's depending on the D line you're going up against, right? You have to be athletically ready to go up against that task. Where someone, let's say a 70-year-old version of you, that will be a grandfather one day, now your grandkids wants to go to Disney. You haven't walked 20,000 steps in a long time. Now that's another challenge that you have in front of you. So you are an athletic version of yourself based on the task that placed upon you. So that's why the term athletes, I love it so much. When someone come in here, we treat everybody as an athlete based on what the goal and the outcome they're looking for. Yeah.
I love that approach, man. And when I came into First CU, not many years ago, but just for this last time, I was in a bad spot. Like, I was in a very hopeless place. And the way our contact started was, I remember it. I texted you and I'm like, hey, Natty, I think this left shoulder of mine is beyond PT. Like, I think it's beyond what you can help me with. You know, do you have any good shoulder surgeons that you can recommend? You sent me across, you know, long story short, multiple series of MRIs, you know. Then I started kind of connecting the dots, and through a couple conversations with you, maybe it's not your shoulder that's bothering you, maybe it's your neck that's causing it, I go to see, you know, a spine surgeon, a this, a that, a pain management. Like, I went every other route other than PT. I should have done PT first. I should have done PT first. I should have done Acu first. But in my mind, because of and again, it was never a bad experience. It was just the mill experience that you do talk about a lot. I was like, there's no way these guys are going to be able to help me. But singularly, that is what helped me. It's crazy.
And we hear that all the time. Like, most people that we work with is someone like you who've been to multiple PTs, have failed before. And, you know, they just didn't know there was anything better. And again, for us to stay alive, we have to make decisions based on our past experience. That's just how we hardwire. So, like, from like the first phone call, from anything that we do, I tell my team, like, hey, it's our job to just hear them out, figure out what didn't work, and then from there we'll use that as a roadmap for us to build a game plan for them. Really, to like, hey, you tried that didn't work. Can we see why that didn't work, and can we build on that, right? So the uniqueness that we have here is that we have the one-on-one time to talk to you, to get to know you. And I would also put a lot of credit on you, man, because you've been diving deep, and every time you come in, you bring in new information for us. And it's two-way street. Like, the way I say it is that if you give me 100, I'll give you 110. Right. And that's how it's always been. So I think we do the work, but it's really, the credit's on you, man, that why you are where you are now. Like, for me, like, we're like Alfred to Batman. You're like Batman, you doing the work. We're just going there to pick you up and like, hey man, let's do this a little bit better and all of that stuff. Just kind of getting you to do what you like to do, and then just be there for you when you need us. But not really fighting crime with you.
I got you. No, that makes sense. I mean, and it's, you know, that's definitely a mentality shift, I think. And I just think people, you know, when they're injured, when they've got a problem, and I was talking to a friend of mine who actually called you guys yesterday, and I know he's going to come see you. As men, particularly men, I think. Because I was talking to Amanda, and she unfortunately wasn't able to be here, so we're making her jealous with our conversation. But I think as men, like in your 40s, you know, you see so much of this stuff with like, just like even David Goggins, right? Like he, you know, you look at him and he's awesome. Like I get it. Goggins. But at the end of the day, like the message that he's saying is just like, for a lot of people, is just keep going even though you're injured. I don't love that. I don't love that. Like, because you can't out tough things, right? Like, you can be tough, you can be physical, you can be whatever, you can be an ass kicker. But at the end of the day, like, the big shift for me this time, back to kind of your original thing, was like, how was that? It's been a big shift because normally I'm just like, whatever, man, I'll just, you know, keep stretching it out. It'll eventually go away, you know, or I'll just lift through it, or I'll just do whatever. This time I couldn't do that because I was like, I mean, I would have sawed my shoulders off if I could have, you know? And if I have that happen to me again, I don't know what I'd do. So I had to figure out a way to slow way down, basically stop, not stop exercising, but stop and then look and listen, right? Like for a fire, right? Stop, look and listen, you know, or an emergency. Because if I didn't do that, I guarantee you I would have landed, you know, maybe I would have gotten better, but whatever, I would have landed back here again and again and again and again if I didn't change, just change my outlook on it and learn more about what the issues were, the root of it. So
I think also, like, with you being an athlete, the narrative that was placed upon you is obviously you're a competitor first. You got to win at all costs, and it was okay not being okay.
Yeah,
right?
Because you just but just even people in general though, like parents don't have time to. You don't have time to be hurt. You know what I mean? So a lot of people shuffle their own health aside, not just because they're injured, but they don't really know how bad they feel, but they just shuffle things aside. Like, I don't have time to be hurt, or I don't have time to be bothered with this, you know, kind of stuff. And even though you truly don't, you ultimately end up being a worse parent, a worse employee or boss or whatever your role is, a worse husband, a worse, you know, dad, a worse coach, because you're dealing with stuff that you may not have to deal with.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, as society, you know, every time you take care of yourself, you get labeled selfish. And I think as a parent, it's even worse. I mean, I wish Amanda was here. She can probably talk about the mom guilt. I think the mom guilt is way worse than anything. And what we're trying to do, even like working with Dr. Jen, is like, you know, as we bring on like pelvic floor, it's like, hey, how do we create this narrative where it's okay for mom to take care of themselves?
100%.
It's okay for parents to say, you know what, I'm going to take care of myself first, and then I'll be a better version. And then therefore I can take care of my kids. I can be a better spouse. I can perform better. And this is what I really enjoy in this part of my life now is I just question everything. I'm going back to being like a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old again, where I just ask why and I question things they're telling me. So like the one thing I always question is like when you become a parent, it's almost like most people say like, oh, your life stopped, like and the narrative of like, hey, my kids is my everything. And I was like, well, why is that? Like, and what are you teaching your kids? Does that mean that when they become parents, that their life also stops too? Right. I was like, why would you want to do that? And as I asked more and more questions, I started to surround myself with people who are like all my mentors in business. They have multiple children. They travel the world. They bring, like, I met someone who bring a 3-month-old to London with 2 other kids. So I'm like, oh, I was like, that's what I want to do. Right. Like, I'd rather follow that. Because 90% of the people would not do that and would have all these reasons of not to do it. Right. So I think it's not selfish, but really self first. And if you're able to take care of yourself first, the way I look at it is if I can serve myself by being a better version of myself, I can serve my family harder. Yeah. I can serve my patients better. I can serve my employees. Because everything that I do, and I think if you want to go down the religion route, every religion kind of teach you that you want to just be a servant, and like that's probably one of the highest quality of a human that you can do is to be selfless in some way. And to be selfless is to help other people by providing your time, your service.
Yeah. Are you religious?
Yeah, I read the Bible every day.
Do you?
Yeah.
I've just started that, man.
Yeah.
I listen to it.
I think it's huge, man. I think it's for me is it put me in a place where I feel like I'm just a grain of sand on a beach.
So much.
And when I feel that way, my problem instantly got a lot smaller. Yeah. And I don't feel as unstoppable because I do feel extremely vulnerable. Yeah. But I'm absolutely comfortable with being vulnerable, where I know like any day can be my last, and life is just become more fun and more lax for me. For some reason, it's a great realization for me.
I would say the same, you know. I just listened to, so I started doing, you know, whatever, man. I'm on a little bit of a crazy quest here to just to get better at a lot of things. You know, whatever it is. But
so I think you I mean, when you're going through that phase, man, like, I mean, your wife, if she's here, she would say that that's probably brought some sort of impact on it. And even your kids, like, you know, I think that's it's huge. There's something humbling about that. Sorry, I got something in my eyes. Something humbling about that. And first off, we're here for a really short time. And the way I looked at it is like, how do you maximize the time that you have? The whole point is not to, you know, like, you want to achieve like external goals, but really inside is like, if today was your last, how was it? Like, what impression did you leave?
100%.
And all of that's like, that's always my reference of thought. And I had a huge growth moment when my dad passed away in 2019.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so he passed away suddenly, and
Really?
that literally I changed completely, dude. Like, my outlook in life, the way I approach things, I take things not as serious, but I take a lot of ownership behind it.
Yeah.
And it drove me to grow, like, personally, spiritually, and like especially in the business, because if you grow yourself, everything else kind of follow. And, you know, it's deepened my relationship, you know, with my wife and the people who I deeply care for, because, you know, now the conversation is become more up, hey, with the time that we have together on this earth, like, how do we get better together?
1,000,000%, man. And you know, like I said, I've been listening to the Bible and because I want to understand it for myself first, right? Like, I'm not religious. I was raised a Christian but I'm not religious. I don't like going to church. I don't find any satisfaction in that really at all. But I have found a lot of satisfaction in doing my PT stuff first thing in the morning, and I'm listening to this, you know, through Spotify. And the one that came up the other day, which it's like all things, you know, a lot of people use the terminology like all things through Christ or all things through God. But the way the guy framed it up, you know, out of the Bible verse was, it's not necessarily that. It's like God does all things through you, right?
Yeah.
And as I thought about that, and it kind of hit home with what you just said there, like being able to take care of yourself, being able to rehab yourself, being able to take care of your health, be preventative, all of these different things, men, women, whatever. Do that. Do that now, because like you said, you are in this really finite space, and it's a very short period of time. So why live it, you know, why live it miserably? Why live it in pain? Why live it with challenges when you might be able to find things for yourself, you know, little self-exploration stuff to help you get through it, get by it, get past it. Maybe it's physical, maybe it's mental, you know, there's a lot of things to do, you know, but
I think like through pain come growth. That's
truth.
That's always my approach. So like, you know, the way I frame things is like, this is happening for me.
Yeah.
And what am I learning from this? Yeah. And I think that's why, like, if you look, like, obviously I wrote a book on ACL, and I'm really big into that. It's because every time someone tore the ACL, their identity is done. And like someone who's defined as an athlete is say, oh my God, that just got taken away from me. Yeah. Who am I? And happened in adolescence. And I love that so much, because it gave me a real opportunity for my team and I to really talk to them and be like, hey, what else are you about? Yeah. Like, let's, and the best part is that we kind of be like, hey, listen, this thing will take care of itself. Like, let's take care of you. Like, what else do you want to know? And that's why me doubling down on working with like season ending injuries, like ACL, UCL, it's really helped me seeing the growth in my patient in some way. And they become like a real person, not just a soccer player, not just a football player. They don't have that identity all the time, because you and I know, like, if you live long enough, you know that you go through different phases. Yeah. And you have to learn to evolve and adapt through those identities, because things happen for you in some way for you to adapt and overcome, so that way you can be a stronger version of yourself in some way. And as kids do this super well, where, you know, like, they're into something, and then the next day they're into something else, right? One day they want to be an astronaut. The next day they want to be a cowboy. It's part of, like, creative play. Yeah. Right?
It's a creative process, for sure.
And as we get older as an adult, rather than being creative, we just doubling down because society dictate that that's what we need to do. We need to double down on that. Otherwise, then you be viewed as aloof in some way.
Right.
And I think when you let that happen, you no longer become creative. I mean, like that scene from Step Brothers when the dad wants to be a dinosaur. Like I mean, like it's hilarious, but there's an element of that. There's a child inside of us in some way, and I think you do need to let that out.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, then what's the point? And then life is just so boring. It's so mundane.
Yeah. You sports, and you're talking about identity. It's so funny how like, so my son plays lacrosse, and he's heavily involved in travel lacrosse, and kid, he loves it. He loves all sports. But it's funny because the development that these kids are getting at such a young age now is unbelievable. Like, and I love it to a degree.
Yeah.
But man, if you don't have the right mindset as a parent, or or you haven't lived through it, or you weren't a coach at some point, you could really get, like these kids could really get way off track. A high school athlete coming in and their only identity is the fact that they play sports. Like, they're their best, whatever. That's dangerous, man.
Yeah.
At least in my mind.
No, it's dangerous in two ways, right? So like first, if parents have a predetermined outcome of what their kids should be like, then there's a lot of pressure on the kids. And as soon as something happens to the kids, now they're going to question not only who they are, but will my parents even view me the same?
Yeah, wow.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it goes super deep. And the way I talk about this is...
do you have young athletes that like they're expressing that to you?
Well...
Or you just get that sense as
I've been doing it for so long that I can kind of feel it in some way, but it's so hard. I mean, for someone to articulate that, it would be tough. But I always go back to like just Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? Where we need basic shelter, we need clothes, we need food, we need self-esteem.
Yeah.
And usually what happens is when someone get injured, the self-esteem part is gone. As soon as self-esteem part is gone, then they have no self-awareness, and you're not going to reach self-actualization. Right. So for me, when it comes to rehab and PT, is like, how do we restore that self-esteem part? Right. That's
a cool way of looking at it, because it's not about just fixing the ACL and getting that better, which, for the most part, ACL outcomes, at least to my knowledge, are really pretty good. Like the mechanical part of it. But the mentality part of it is
the mentality part is where is a huge gap. And like most of the time, if you go to a good clinic who has background strength conditioning, know how to load people, know how to progress people, you'll get the good outcome.
Right.
But what we really try to do is, how do we marry the physical outcome with the mental? Yeah. How do we get people to feel so confident when they go play, they actually have fun? Like like you've been in a game where you're just in the zone, and everything, it just feel like you're floating. Yeah. Right? You're just like, I'm on.
A good golf swing.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the one swing you're always chasing, right?
Exactly. A good golf swing, which is rare, but
And going back to the parents thing, you are someone who is an accomplished athlete, and you don't need to find that in your kids. You're not living vicariously through your kids, where some parents, again, the best part about being really good parents is that you want to give resources to your kids that you didn't have. Yeah. And while you're doing that, you got to make sure, like, are you doing it for them, or are you doing it for you?
Right. You got to find the right reason, and coaching youth sports, coaching high school sports. I was talking to a friend of mine last night. Like, I get the neat opportunity to see and develop kids from a really young age in multiple sports. So help work with them on just not only their athleticism, but the mentality, the approach, the camaraderie, the team aspect, all super important stuff, right? That I think sometimes is lacking or missing. So helping them understand that. And then there's like a 2-year gap where I don't really get to see them. And then I start seeing them again, like as freshmen, sophomore, junior, seniors. Because I'm not like a 7th and 8th grade coach. And it's interesting to like see kind of like here they are, and then they go through 2 years. And I haven't had this to happen to my own kids yet, like the own kids that I've coached, but like just seeing that age and then seeing them when they come out on the other side, like, does that carry over? You know, are they learning, or what are they learning? And it's been a neat experience to see both sides of it, right? Yeah. But there's still an enormous amount of growth that goes from like freshmen, you know, the freshman kids who come out for football all the way up to the senior kids. Like, there's extremely stark differences between the two of them as far as, you know, mental and physical maturity, but just even their understanding and their approach to the game. Like, it's rare, very rare, when a freshman has the capability. They may have the physical capability, but when they have the mental capability to play in a varsity game.
Yeah.
You know, like at any level. I don't care, you know, if it's the best school in New Jersey or the worst team in New Jersey. Just the ability to step on that field, it takes a lot. And it would be a very special freshman, you know, kid that is able to do that, you know, man or woman. So I think, you know, just expectation setting and parents understanding, like you said, is it for them or is it for you?
Yeah.
Being clear on that.
And I mean, I had many discussions with parents where I have to set them down and be like, hey, like there's time where people are like, well, if they were going to go to this place, they would have been clear. I was like, yep, I totally understand that, but I want to make sure we are on the same page that I'm here to serve your son or daughter. Yeah. I'm not here to serve you. Yeah. I understand that's your child, but it's also my job as well to make sure that they have the best outcome. And this is like a one-time thing. Sure. You know, I'm thinking for them like 10 years down the road when all the flight light sites is not in their life anymore. Like, what is it going to be like them getting in and out the car? And there's time where parents literally storm out of my office. And,
no doubt.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I have one parent who literally would not look at me in the eyes, got so pissed off, walked out. And I think fast forward 3 months, like, we're on like a talking regular basis. Super thankful that I stood my ground extremely firm.
Good for you.
And again, it's part of, you know, ownership, right? Of what is it that I'm trying to do. And even some of the pro guys that come see me is that they know that no one's signing my check. Right. That I get to make decision, you know, to advocate for them. Yeah. Right? At some point, no one's calling me like, I need this person in. Like, no, like, I don't work for you. You can't dictate the way I do things. And I'm extremely proud of that. And I think the team, like all the clinician knows that they have my full 100% support, whatever they come to conclusion with, right? And we have some instances where we have some older generation of surgeon where they haven't updated their protocol in a very long time, and they want to do things of what they used to do in the 90s, which is back in the 90s, like, first off, like way long ago, like ACL, they just cast it and you don't move it. Right. Now we move it like day 2. Right. Yeah. And sometimes we have surgeons who don't want to do that. Yeah. And I would go to bat for my PT, for my patient all the time. I was like, hey, listen, we're going to go based on what the evidence is saying.
That's such an interesting spot to be in, man. Like, I talk to athletic trainers and things like that. Like, they're in a hard spot, and so are PTs. Because you do have to stand super firm on your ground. Because you've got, you know, well, let's just say your son or daughter's like an absolute stud on a team, and they're the difference maker, right? They, you know, now football's a little different, and sure, you can be the difference maker in football, but like 11 guys have to do their job perfect to win, right? But other sports, maybe like basketball or whatever, let's just say you're treating, you know, Bronny James or something along those lines, and you say, nope, he is not able to play. And you got parents or, you know, coaches or whatever breathing down your neck. That's a hard spot to be in, but I'm glad to hear that you don't allow that to influence your position on where they're going to be 10 or 15 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not like I'm being rude about it. We're obviously sitting down having a good conversation of like, hey, like, I see where you're coming from. This is where I'm coming from. Can we meet somewhere in the middle? Right. Like, can we figure out like what's the best for your child? What's the best for you? Right. Like, what decision can you live with? I think that's a big thing. And there's time where we tell parents certain thing and we obviously get undermined.
Yeah.
And then when that happened, we obviously have to, roll with the punches and say, okay, well, apparently you're doing this and we didn't approve that. So, we have to document that. But then our job is to just like, okay, well, now this is the situation. It's not ideal. How do we make it better on the patient?
Yeah.
Right? I'm not going to like put my foot down and be like, oh, well, I can't work with you anymore because this and that. Because at the end of the day, it's the patient that loses.
Right.
And, we're in it for the patient. And that's always been, my philosophy.
Yeah, that game win, and that's interesting too, because I have to advocate. I'm actually going to interview a friend of mine who is, he was a former OBGYN. I used to call on him as a resident, really great guy. Mm-hmm. And he is an advocate. He was a football player at Duquesne. And he is an advocate for kids not starting football until after sixth grade. Mm-hmm. Now, he also had to retire from obstetrics because he has CTE. Mm. And it's going to be a tough interview for me because I know where his position is, mm-hmm. but I also know and understand how much the dynamics of the game have changed, how much if you are around good coaches and mm-hmm. good teams, how much the technique and the blocking and I'm trying to keep kids' heads out of mm-hmm. blocking. Yeah. I'm trying to teach them leverage techniques and hand position and hand placement and, body placement and all this different stuff to keep them from ramming their head into people, mm-hmm. right? I'm actually kind of pissed if they're coming out with scarred up face masks. Mm-hmm. I know it's going to happen, but the frequency and duration of when it happens is what I'm trying to reduce, mm-hmm. right? As a coach. So it should be a really interesting interview with him because he actually had to retire from obstetrics because, he'd be like mid-surgery and forget what he was supposed to do. Oh, wow. I know. Yeah. TJ, good guy, and I'm looking forward to it. Fortunately, he was able to be self-aware about mm-hmm. it. But, so he advocates now, but, it's tough. I mean, I think the physical part maybe is a little bit easier than the mental part. Do you guys do any rehab, as far as concussion work? Like, what does that look like for a DPT? Yeah, so we do like return to play concussion protocol. Okay. So if someone we work closely with the neurologist to see where they are. If they are symptom free, like on the day-to-day walking, going up and down the stairs, can read, turn the light on and be okay. Great. So once those symptoms subside, then we get them in, and the protocol is like a 5 days long protocol. Right. Where you come in, you ramp up, like have them do just do cardio. Yeah. Do you get any symptom? Nope. Okay, then you move on to the next stage. So all it is increasing the intensity of the workout, and increasing heart rate, just to see if there's any symptom or not. How well do you think that this, like in your opinion, how well do you think that is giving a good clinical picture? Do you think it's enough? I think it's tough. It's tough, and my approach based on this is my wife's a neuropsychologist, so she does that. I did not. Yeah, know. all this, the concussion screen and all of that stuff, and like the brain healing is so different, and it's different for everybody. Right. So, for me, we try to mimic gameplay decision and game intensity as much as we can. Right. While like the regular protocol just say, hey, you just do return to play stuff. Right. We actually try to introduce some light contact into it just to see what's going on, perhaps some quick decision making. Yeah. If someone can tolerate that and okay with it, we feel comfortable enough to send them back to practice. Right. And again, it's just like what we usually do with ACL. It's like we go to non-contact practice, see how you feel, and then from there we ramp them up to, hey, contact practice for this time, and then game is like, hey, 15 minutes in this quarter, and then 15 minutes next quarter, see how you do. It's like, so I think that's the best way to do it, because the fine line we have to walk is how do we get kids to participate and slowly build up confidence, right? If I hold them back 100% and throw them back in, nope, no way they're confident. 100%. Confidence shot. Yeah. And that's increased risk of injury as well. Right. So graded exposure, just like, just like strength training. Yeah. Right? You want to slowly build up, and that's all we can do. And the best part about it is
is when they go through those greatest exposure, we're right there with them.
Right.
Come back, give us feedback. What's going on?
I am so glad that we take this all very seriously as coaches, PTs. You know, I still think that monikers need to change among people. You know, it needs to get better, but the matriculation of taking contact sports seriously, taking concussions especially very, very seriously, it's so much different than when I was a player. Like, and I'm not saying that people, you know, listen, if you got knocked out, they were taking that seriously, but I can't count the number of times that I got quote unquote my bell rung or whatever through high school and through college. And I don't, you know, if you didn't complain of signs or symptoms of anything or you know, and you may not know, right? But I'm glad that people are taking it more seriously, especially in New Jersey. Like, you know, we go through every year extensive amounts of certifications for youth sports, and you know, it's one of those things that like you've got to be on the lookout for, like majorly. Yeah. You know, and you might have to tell a kid. I had to last year. We had a kid, great player, tough as a box of rocks, and he had a concussion. I said, you know, he comes out and he was acting a little off, and I'm like, I keep talking to him, Logan, you know, you can take that part out of it because I don't want that in there. But, you know, are you okay? Are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay, coach. I'm okay. I'm like, something seems off. I sent him back in for like a play or two. And, you know, nothing really happened. You know, there wasn't anything clear on the field that happened to him. He didn't, like, wasn't down and being treated by the trainer or anything. And finally, I'm like, no, I cannot put you back into this game. Like, we've got to go talk to the trainer. And he only maybe played 2 or 3 more plays, but he would not have. He would not have come out of that game had we not been right on top of him, paying attention to it as coaches. And I'm glad that we did, because he ultimately ended up having a concussion. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to finish, you know, his last game of his senior season. But that's more valuable. You know, nobody will remember that game, right? 30 years from now.
He might not even remember that game.
That's what I mean, right? You know, so 30 years from now, your brain's more protected because you made a decision in the moment. And I'm not a clinician, but you know, that's just an intuition thing as a coach and a parent. So
yeah, and I think being a coach again is a very selfless job, right? Because
it is, man.
You have to sacrifice your time, but you have to sacrifice your ego and your pride of potentially losing a win. Yeah. Right? And again, it's going back to just, what are you doing it for? Like, are you doing it for yourself? And do you want to, like, some coach want to have winning records and all of that stuff, and they'll win at all costs? Or some of them just like, all right, I want my kids to perform at the highest level, give them the best opportunity to play at the next level. And fortunately for me, all the coaches that I associate with have aligned core values.
So
where
awesome.
They just want to make sure, like, hey, great, we'll win. Yeah. But I want you to have a career. Like, let's, you know, especially like some of the guys that we work with from like inner city, like the only opportunity to go to college for free is that.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's a hard spot for some kids. I totally get it. But it's good that you have that comfortable dialogue with the coaches. And I imagine if you can't develop that dialogue, or you get a coach that tries to push too hard, too fast, you're like, I don't want to work with you. You know, like you've got to stand in there and stand your ground. And even if it's the best program in the state, whatever it is, you got to say, listen, I'm not your guy. And I think, I'm sure that moniker is changing among many, many PTs and many, you know, physicians and things like that, based off the information that we have now. And it's a great thing, you know. It's a great thing that's kind of matriculating out of sports. You know, I think it's going to take a few more years, but sports, you know. Sports are great. I could talk about coaching and reffing and all that stuff for a million years.
And obviously, I mean, listen, man, we've been going at it for a while. I want to ask you one last question.
Please do.
For sure. Is obviously, if you had an opportunity to go back in time, right? Talk to you maybe 5 years ago, right? Yeah. What advice would you give yourself?
And it's funny because I was actually going to end my thought, because I wanted to ask you one more question, but it's the same question. My son is going to be 12. My daughter is going to be 9. From what I've learned, and I can show them a million things, and I work with them, and my wife Amanda works with them, and we try to show them proper form and mechanics and learn the basics and things like that, right? I've been around it long enough where I can show them. I've been strongly considering, and this relates to me as well, having my kids come and do some sessions with anybody here. It doesn't matter which clinician, to come and do some movement sessions, like learn how to turn these muscles on, learn how to turn those muscles on, right? To jump, to run, to do, and they're athletic kids. They are. They can move their bodies in space. I'm not asking you to teach them to be an athlete. I'm asking you to teach them, or if it's valuable to teach them at a young age, how to turn different muscles on and off to get the job done. Because that's the advice I would give myself. Mm-hmm. Come to a guy or a girl or whatever, like Natty, if you can find one, that, and Danny and the team here, that understand movement that well, to get just like a basic eval to help you understand which muscles to move when. Mm-hmm. That would be the advice I'd give to myself. And then that's also my return question to you. It's like, is that valuable? What age would that be valuable? And is that something that you do?
I think, well, obviously, when it comes to moving and helping people just move better and be better overall, we can definitely help.
Yeah.
My answer to that question would be, obviously, expose kids at a young age to many movement variation as possible.
Right.
Play different sport, do all these things, because each sport plays different demands on the body. And the cool thing about the brain and neuroplasticity is that it's adaptable, and you can still learn new skill every single day. When you are put in place if there are some constraint that plays upon you, you have to overcome that by trying to learn new things, right? And that's where you learn.
Yeah.
I think play new sport, work out at a young age.
Yeah, agreed.
Because nothing help you with your motor control and your internal dialogue than just muscle recruitment, feeling soreness. I think that's the best time. Because the feedback we always give people, oh, how do you feel the following day? Oh man, this was light up, super sore.
Right.
That means you're using the right muscle. Now you're connecting with that muscle. Right. So obviously we love working with younger population, just to be able to teach them hey, we're gonna do this movement. It's always press, squat, hinge, right? Different pattern.
Yep.
You're going to use this muscle. You should feel sore here.
Yep.
And then once you feel sore, the next time, all right, cool. Now we're going to learn how to jump. We're going to learn how to run. We're going to learn how to cut using these muscles.
Right.
And I think that's probably the best foundation that you can build upon when working with younger athlete or an athlete that's really have lack of awareness.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting because I work with so many kids that are again, athletic, right? But I'm just trying to get them, their parents, from high school and even down to my own kids, how to learn how to do things the right way using the right muscles, not form, but not necessarily form, not completely form, but using the right muscles at the right time to do the job. And I think I know somebody like you guys could teach them that. I just wonder what that would look like. Couple, 3-4 sessions, And to me, that would be way worth the value of taking the time and energy to get here, the cost that's associated with it, and just everything that goes along with it. Because you're helping them move better, but you're also really doing them a service of helping prevent injury long term. So
yeah, no, man, that's something we can talk about it. I think that's something that'll be really cool to work with. Cool. But Nick, man, I really want to thank you for your time. What a fun. Great conversation.
Yeah, this was a blast. It was a long time coming. I'm glad we were able to do it. I could pick your brain for hours, but thank you.
Of course. Next time I'll return the favor. I'll go on your podcast.
All right, man. Sounds great.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
You got it.